So, small video today. Major news has just came out that Denis Villeneuve is set to direct the next 007 James Bond film for Amazon MGM Studios. This is a very bizarre sort of situation. One of the first thoughts I had, I have to be honest, was it's so incredibly funny to me that a Canadian Frenchman is going to be directing the next James Bond movie. Just because of obviously the humor and the sort of insulting back and forth jokes between French and British, particularly English people. It's so funny that now the best director in the world, in my opinion, the best director in the world, is going to direct the next film in a British institution. That's hilarious to me, and I'm glad it's him. But there is an irony there that I would be lying if I didn't say I was picking up on it and I thought it was incredibly funny. On a more serious level, I am incredibly happy with this decision. When you're going for spectacle and a director who excels at personal storytelling but also making it feel grand, when you're going for a director who excels in dialogue work, even though he says he doesn't like dialogue, I don't believe that there is a better director working right now than Denis Villeneuve. Obviously, because of the things that I've just listed, especially spectacle, many people would obviously disagree and say Christopher Nolan. Me personally, I would prefer Villeneuve's 007 as opposed to Christopher Nolan's 007. As I understand it, he wasn't on the list of contenders anyways. He's obviously wrapped up at Universal. It would take a lot to get him out of Universal, and he's probably not enticed by the idea of working for Amazon anyways. He's not a streamer guy, he's a studio guy. That is what he is. He's a Hollywood-made man through and through. He exists in that world. He has no desire to leave it. Whereas Villeneuve, I think, is, in my opinion, a bit more of a politician. He is willing to go wherever the next creative endeavor, wherever the next artistic sort of challenge takes him. He doesn't look at it and go, well, I'm not working with so-and-so because I don't like them. At least that's what I can glean from interviews. He seems much more willing to go, I want to work on this project. How do I work on this project? And he is also right now in sort of an 8 or 9 year streak of just doing things that he is passionate about. So if we look at quotes from over the years, we can see that he's obsessed with this franchise. This is one of the things that has really made him become a director. And that gives me a lot of hope, seeing how he has handled the Blade Runner franchise, seeing how he handled is handling the Dune franchise is very inspiring and fills me with a lot of enthusiasm that he is going to understand this franchise. He is going to come into this and go, how do we stick to tradition? How do we update this for the modern era? But how do we keep within what has already existed? In 2015, when he was on the press tour for Sicario, he was quoted as saying, I was raised with James Bond. I love James Bond films. I would love to do a James Bond movie one day. Action is very cinematic. I don't like dialogue. I am someone that loves movement. Action, if it is well done, can be very poetic and meaningful. This sort of brings me on to one of the main things that I want to talk about. Personally, the dialogue, yes, whilst it is one of the main focuses of the 007 films, particularly the one-liners and the witty humour, you don't need a script like Dune or like Blade Runner 2049 that is heavy on the dialogue and uses its dialogue to put across its messages. With James Bond, a lot of your storytelling is spectacle, it is set pieces, it is stunts. And therefore, what he's saying about his choice in what he chooses to focus on lends itself to a Bond film because the storytelling is so ingrained into how James Bond moves, who he's interacting with. It is like a dance. I am intrigued to see what Villeneuve can add to this franchise when it comes to action, particularly because I don't know if Villeneuve has, as of yet, taken on a film that is uniquely guided by its action sequences in the way that James Bond films are. Since Blade Runner, his films have had action in them. Blade Runner has set pieces. The Dune films have set pieces. They aren't action set pieces in the way that a James Bond action set piece sort of moves and the focus. There is a sort of modern aspect. There is gadgets. There is the cars. There is weaponry that don't exist usually in the Blade Runner and the Dune worlds, particularly Dune. In this, it is going to be a lot more weapon focused. I wonder if John Wick films might take an influence on that, because we haven't really had John Wick and 007 running side by side. As the John Wick franchise was sort of going like that, James Bond was sort of going like that a bit, and it's sort of just like on a straight line right now. So I wonder what his influences are going to be action-wise. From his statement announcing that he is going to be taking on this project, one of the things that gives me a lot of hope and tells me that he cares about this, he's not just doing this because, oh, I can do this, is some of the words that he uses in his statement. I'm a diehard Bond fan. Sacred territory. Honor. Tradition. Massive responsibility. These all suggest to me that he gets it. He's coming at this as he did with Blade Runner, as he did with the Dune franchise, or is doing right now. He comes at all of these projects and go, okay, I'm either adapting material or I'm expanding on something that already exists. How do I introduce myself to this whilst also continuing to respect what came before? There is a lot of humility and respect and an awareness of duty and responsibility to the material that comes through in his films, but also in his interviews, where if you look at Dune interviews, he says, I had to accept some of the shortcomings of the film because I could never make it perfect. I could never make it perfect the way that the book is. To have that sort of work ethic and acceptance of failure, along with the ability to understand your responsibility to respect tradition, suggests to me that this film is in the right hands. There isn't anyone else that I would prefer to be doing this. And so, as we talk about, oh, no one else could do this, let's list some of the other names that were in contention for this, because I think, you look at the list and you go like, yeah, fuck it, like, there's no one else on this list that I would have preferred to have done it. So, Paul King, who did the Paddington films, I don't really know why he was on that list, other than he's British. I guess has worked with another British institution of film culture, but there's no experience there in terms of action. Jonathan Nolan, not a director. He's only ever directed TV episodes and I believe short films. He is a writer, obviously a great writer. Westworld, a lot of his brother's films, Interstellar, for example. But he's not a director. I don't want a first-time film director doing the next James Bond film. This film needs to work immediately. It cannot be caught in production hell. It cannot be, I liked it, it was alright, maybe I could see why you didn't like it. It has to fire on all cylinders. It is detrimental to the franchise on a fatal level. Edward Berger, I do like. Conclave, All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't know if he necessarily has a grasp on humour that you need for the 007 franchise. Maybe you could make that same argument for Villeneuve even. But he's a relatively newer filmmaker, I would say, as well. Although what he's done so far is racked up Oscar nominations. So it's not like he's, allowed. Conclave is almost a spy thriller. Corporate or political espionage is what you would characterize that as. I wouldn't have hated this, but it's not a name that excites me, I have to say. Edgar Wright. I like Edgar Wright. He's British. He would have got it. But he is eccentric. He also has a long process. He takes a while to develop a lot of his films. I think that maybe Amazon was looking at him and going, we need someone that's a bit more stable. The one that I definitely think could have worked the best on this list is Alfonso Cuarón. That being said, he hasn't worked in about 7 years, since Roma. I like Cuarón, but do you really want to take a risk on a guy who's, I think, getting up there now and has had time out of the game at this point, a lot of time out of the game? I would have trusted Cuarón, I would have trusted Berger. I would have trusted pretty much anyone on this list other than maybe Paul King. I still think Jonathan Nolan could have done a decent film. I don't see why he would be in the running is the thing. He can't have seriously been in the running. But, Paul King, like, why is he there? Respect for your Paddington franchise, but, like, come on, bro. The final thing that I want to finish on is this question of Villeneuve likes frequent collaborators, Batista, Josh Brolin. What I'm questioning here is some of the casting decisions. Not questioning them in a bad way, but there are some on here that I'm like, that works. Batista looks like a James Bond villain already. Rebecca Ferguson could do basically any role in a James Bond film. She could be M, she could be Miss Moneypenny, she could be a Bond girl, she could be a villain, just straight up villain. The one I am hoping for is either villain or M. And I think she will be in this film. I will say that straight up. It makes too much sense. Her relationship with Denis Villeneuve, the focus on femininity that a lot of his films have, it makes perfect sense for her to be there. And I think either having her as Mission Control or having her as a villain is perfect. I would highly doubt that she would take on the role as a Bond girl because she's pretty much just done that in the Mission Impossible films. And she's also too big of a star now to be sort of put in that role, in my opinion. And then the other one is Josh Brolin. I could see Josh Brolin playing some sort of seasoned, grizzled CIA veteran. Although, again, he has kind of already played that role in Sicario. But all three of these I could see. Maybe there's others on the list that I'm forgetting. Damien Dastalmakian you could see as, maybe another Bond villain. There's a lot to this that I think makes good sense. And I'm very enthused by this. Obviously, the next decision is who's going to play Bond. That's the big one. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something about like M or Q, Miss Moneypenny come out before that. I'm expecting by the end of the year to know who the new James Bond is. One that recently popped up in my mind because I watched F1, and I'll probably reference a bit of this in my F1 video. Damson Idris, for some reason, just kind of escaped my mind. I hadn't thought of that. And then I watched F1, and I was like, this makes perfect sense. F1 is a thriller. He's facing off against an older guy. He's a rookie. He has a desire to prove himself. He's young. He's only 33. He could play Bond for 10, 15 years. It makes perfect sense to me. And he works. He'd bring in a younger audience. He'd bring in an existing audience from Snowfall and F1. I think that's a good choice. I don't know if he'll get it, because I don't know if he's a big enough actor for it. We think they want someone younger, probably about 28, 29, so maybe he's a bit too old. But I think he's a good decision. And as I said, that's the next big one that we're waiting for. So overall, I'm very happy with this. When I seen this at like 2 a.m. last night, I was like, fuck yeah, that's a very good choice. I cannot wait to see what he puts out with this. And also, I'm very intrigued to see, is he going to go a very philosophical route? Is he going to try and infuse the action with some sort of philosophical point? Or is he just going to go, this is a straight Bond film? And then I don't know what he does with a straight Bond film. I will be there day one. This is obviously like 3 years off anyways. Dune Messiah comes out December 16th, 2026. So this is a ways off. But I am very enthused by this. This is, again, another decision that Amazon has got right around James Bond. The memo that got released saying James Bond has to be a man, has to be British. So we know that the producers, seasoned Hollywood veterans, they've got it right so far. I don't trust Amazon. None of us should. They're a fucking faceless, ghoulless corporate overlords. But so far, they've taken a lot of care with this. And now they've just got to get the big decision right. So I'm very happy. And I cannot wait to see what this looks like.